Well, good afternoon, good morning. How is everyone doing today? I'm Stella Beard with Kentucky Spin, and we are so happy that you have joined us today for our webinar on guardianship in Kentucky. I sure hope that everyone is having a great morning, and we are trying something new today, and we are going to try to show you our faces while we are presenting. So I think that'll hopefully involve a little more interaction with you all, and I think that will be great. We're excited that you've joined us today. We're going to give you kind of an overview of guardianship and some alternatives to guardianship. So I really hope that this will benefit you all today. Just a little bit of housekeeping though before we get started. I want to tell you a little bit about Spin, but I also want to let you know about the dashboard that you will see on the right-hand side. And thank you all for letting me know that you could hear and that you could see the PowerPoint. We had just a little bit of technical difficulty, which of course is normal right now in the world of technology that we're all living in. But on your dashboard, you will see you have a chat box and there's also a question box. So throughout the presentation, if you do have a question, if you will just type that there for us, so I can monitor those for Kelly, who will be presenting the presentation today. So please feel free to type your questions in there and we will try to get to them as we can. If we don't get to your question, we will follow up with you after the webinar and answer any specific question that you may have. You will also see a drop-down box that says handouts. On that particular drop-down box, you will see the PowerPoint and then 3 additional handouts that we are providing you all today. Feel free to download those at any time throughout the presentation, but I will let you know this afternoon we will be following up. We'll have all of those handouts included for you. So I think that will be really good for YouTube. Someone is saying they're not able to hear. You might need to check your mute button to make sure that you are not muted on your end. But I believe everyone else can hear. If not, please let me know. So let me tell you a little bit about Kentucky Spin. Kentucky Spin, we are the Parent Training and Information Center for the state of Kentucky. We are funded by the U.S. Department of Education, which is under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and we have been the Parent Training and Information Center since 1988. We provide training, support. Of course, we have been doing webinars now since March with a lot of great information for families, but we work with children and youth with all types of disabilities from birth to age 26. We do not act as attorneys. However, we empower families to effectively advocate children. Staff and consultants are either parents who have children with disabilities, young adults with disabilities. They are either siblings who have family members with disabilities. And so I think that really is a wonderful connection that we do have with families. I am going to turn off my webcam. I do see that that might be causing a little bit of difficulty in our presentation today. So we were going to try to do that, but I don't think that's going to work. So Kelly, you might not want to show your webcam because it obviously pulls way too much of our internet service. Unfortunately, I live very rural. I'm in the country, and I think that that could be an issue too. We normally do these at the library, and since we're all working from home now, that's kind of been an issue. So, but we're going to get through this, and hopefully we will not have any problems as we go on. As I said, I will be monitoring the questions, and we do have with us Kelly Smith, who is our training coordinator for Kentucky Spin, and she is going to actually be doing the presentation today. So Kelly, can you hear?
I can.
Okay, great. You know, we had all these great ideas if we wanted to show our faces. We just thought that would be so wonderful, but it looks like it's probably going to be pulling too much. So we'll just go ahead with the presentation, and thank you, Kelly, for joining us, and we'll get started.
Well, as Stella said, I am the training coordinator for Kentucky SPIN, or Kentucky Special Parent Involvement Network. I have a 23-year-old son who has a traumatic brain injury, and guardianship has been a problematic area for me. When he was in high school, the school definitely recommended that I pursue guardianship, and I really, really struggled with it. Because I felt like he had been through enough, and whatever rights he had, I wanted him to be able to keep. So we've functioned fairly well with supported decision making, which we're going to talk about here in just a little bit. But we understand that guardianship should be considered very, very thoughtfully and carefully. I would not want anyone to pursue guardianship of me. And we must remember that even though an individual may have an intellectual or developmental disability, that doesn't mean that we should automatically pursue the removing of their rights. So today we're going to talk about an overview of guardianship in Kentucky and the age of majority, the different types of guardianship, alternatives to guardianship, how to apply for guardianship, and then at the end of the presentation, I will leave a couple of minutes for questions and answers. And like Stella said, if we don't get to them all, we definitely will follow up with you. So just some questions to kind of gauge where we are. Parents of children with disabilities are automatically guardians of their children when they reach the age of majority. Can you just type in your chat box the answer to that, true or false, yes or no, so we can kind of gauge where our audience is? I'm going to give you just a second to do that, please.
And if you don't see the chat box on your end, which I think you do, but if not, you can also type.
Okay, I don't know. I can't hear Stella right now, so hopefully you guys can still hear me. Okay, so I see that some people are saying false, some people are saying that they're unsure. So the parents of children with disabilities are not automatically guardians of their child when they reach the age of majority. Do you guys know what the age of majority is in Kentucky? Or if someone says, says the phrase age of majority, do you know what they're talking about? Okay, and I see people are commenting, some 18, some 21, some no. The age of majority in Kentucky is age 18. So like I said, parents of children with disabilities are not automatically guardians of their children when they reach the age of majority or age 18. Once a child reaches the age of majority, the parent is no longer their legal guardian and cannot make decisions on their behalf without their child's consent. This also is in regards to education. So what is the age of majority in Kentucky? We already said it's 18. So there are some exceptions to the age of majority. The exact verbiage says persons of the age of majority, which is 18, are the age of majority for all purposes in this Commonwealth, except for the purchase of alcoholic beverages and for purposes of care and treatment of children with disabilities, for which 21 years of age is the age of majority. All other statutes to the contrary notwithstanding. And we do have the contact person. If you were to have questions or issues, we have the name, the contact information for a person that you can contact at Kentucky Department of Education. So the age of majority is something that really needs more clarification. Regarding the age of majority, parents are natural guardians. Parents do not have to obtain guardianship to continue to attend ARC or IEP meetings. Your adult child can invite you to attend. And so that seemed, I can remember, you know, with my son, when they informed me of that, I said, oh my goodness, you know, he doesn't know what's best for his education. He doesn't, he has a hard time understanding a lot of the things that you say. So what we did is we had him write a statement, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. But there's also something called a determination of educational representative form, but it's not really used for the purpose of allowing parents to make those educational decisions. So, and this is a copy, you know, a printout of that determination of education representative. And if you read through that, there's all kinds of different scenarios. But they're really like if you're moving from one place to another, if you're moving in and out of foster care, if a child's adopted or in foster care or whatever. So another thing that a parent has, or a child or young adult has the option of doing is writing a statement, just a simple letter to the Board of Education. Here is a representation of this letter. It says, dear school personnel, I give consent and permission for blank, which could be you as a parent or whoever they would like to do that, to act as my educational representative and attend all ARC and IEP meetings or any other necessary meetings to help me with my educational decisions. That does not give you the right to make those decisions. That gives you the right to attend the meeting and assist your child, your young adult or your adult child, or however you want to call it, in making the necessary decisions for their education. We also recommend having this notarized and given to the school, and make sure that you keep a copy of it. I would go as far as to have 2 copies notarized, have the school sign one and keep it, and then have the school sign the other and you keep it. So some questions you're going to want to consider when you're looking into guardianship is look at the abilities of your child. Can they take care of their own personal needs? Can they manage their finances? Can they easily be taken advantage of? And are there other alternatives available? I know with my son, the major push from the school was that because he has just got the biggest heart, that he will literally do just about anything for anyone, and he will give them his last dime or his last morsel of bread, if that's what it takes, to make sure that no one in his presence goes without. And because of that, he can be easily taken advantage of. And so for educational purposes, we have to show that their disability has an adverse effect on the student's education, just the same as to get an IEP. And that means that the progress of the child is impeded by the disability to the extent that the educational performance is significantly and consistently below the level of similar age peers. So those questions are good when you're trying to determine the level of support that they're going to need. So what skills should our kids know? The disability or no disability, we all need to know these things. We all need communication skills, being able to communicate what they want and what they don't want without relying on someone else to make those decisions for them. They need to have some self-understanding of their disability. They need to know their strengths, their needs, and how their disability affects their life. They need self-advocacy skills. They need to learn to use their voice to express their wants and needs, like I said, and letting others know if something is not going right for them or if something has made them feel uncomfortable. They need to be able to set goals for themselves. So what do they want to do with their future following high school? Can they understand the steps in the process to reach their goals? If not, what skills do they need in order to successfully accomplish a future goal? And then they need problem solving skills. What will they do if they're in a situation that requires them to make a hard decision and find a way to get out of a certain situation if needed? What are the steps they need to go through to solve problems quickly and effectively? And how can those skills be strengthened? They need social skills and friendship building. Um, you know, my son has lots and lots of friends um, in a different town. We moved about a year and a half ago so he would have better employment opportunities. And so he has lived in this town for a year and a half, and he has no friends outside of the people that he works with. And he does not have the skills to get out and meet people. And so I wish that that was something that I had really pushed for in his IEP. Of course, I guess I didn't really realize it at the time because he had tons of friends in school, but now as an adult, he doesn't have those skills. So you definitely want to carefully evaluate that because he spends a lot of money traveling back to where we're from, going to see those friends rather than making friends here and then going back occasionally. They need to know their rights. That they need to know, what their rights are, what their civil rights are. They need to know how to vote or what voting is. They need to know what they can and can't do, and if they're involved in activities outside of what your family does, they need to know what's okay and what's not. And then finally, they need to be able to tell people about their disability. They need to make sure that they're aware of the name of their disability, if it's applicable, and be able to ask for assistance if needed. There's a quote from Leonard Sweet that says, barriers such as overprotection are usually more disabling than limitations. I'm sorry, that wasn't by Leonard Sweet, that was by M. Ward. So barriers such as overprotection are usually more disabling than limitations imposed by a person's physical or mental disability. We want to let our children fly and begin to experience life like their typical peers. But we also need to remember, we need to keep it in the back of our mom and dad brain that what's cute at 6 is not cute at 20. So we want to keep them as much on target with their peers as possible. So Leonard Sweet says, the future is not something we enter. The future is something we create. And creating that future requires us to make choices and decisions. All that will begin with a dream. So while our kids are in school, we fight for an inclusive education for our children with disabilities, or the least restrictive environment. That's the law. That's what we choose to do, and that's what we're required to do. But when they turn 18, we immediately feel like we have to stomp on the brakes and go to the most restrictive environment because we just want to protect them from the adult world. And I mean, that's fully understandable. And then we almost always say, well, I need to get guardianship. I need, they're going to be taken advantage of. They might get in a bad relationship. They might make a mistake. So a guardianship may not always be the best solution. We need to look at all the options before making that life-changing decision. So some guardianship terms and what they mean. guardianship is a legal tool that grants parents or another adult the legal authority to make decisions for a legally disabled adult. Then there are different kinds of guardianship. There's guardian versus limited guardian. So guardian has complete responsibility for the person, including their financial affairs. A limited guardian doesn't have all those legal powers and duties. The judge chooses, what the person can do or what the limited guardian has powers over. And then there's a conservator who has responsibility for the person's financial affairs. And then there's a limited conservator who only has some responsibility for the person's financial affairs. And so we have attached, one of the handouts that we've attached is a Thinking Guardianship booklet from Protection and Advocacy that is absolutely phenomenal. And that I can contribute 100% to the very reason I chose not to pursue guardianship at that time, when he was about to turn 18. It explained things very, very well for me, and so I highly recommend you look over that. So what are some alternatives to guardianship? Okay, the first thing we can do is provide additional skills, training, and development. We can add those additional skills, training, and development right into the IEP in their transition needs. Don't be afraid to do that, and you need to look at things critically. We also have added a tool for supported decision making in your handout that is amazing. I highly recommend, again, that you download it, that you print it out. If you do not have access to a printer, send us an email, make a phone call, and we will mail you the handout. But these are critical for your children, and I would have just about done anything to have that handout. It's a great way to really help you narrow some things down. You can be a co-signer to help with money management, or you can open a Kentucky Stable account. So for more information, you can go to stablekentucky.com. You can also create power of attorney. So this gives one person the ability to make certain decisions on behalf of the other. Or you can become representative payee if they receive Social Security benefits or SSI. This is decided on based on the Social Security Administration whether or not they need a payee. When the judge is deciding, okay, yes, this person has a disability, the judge makes the recommendation of whether or not a payee is needed. And it is also important to consider the fact that Social Security does take into consideration what the adult wants. So if you're mom and dad, and let's say mom is a representative payee, and your son Johnny doesn't want you to be his payee anymore. He does have the right, even though you are his payee, to go to the Social Security office or call them and say, I don't want my mom to be my payee anymore. At that point, they'll do an investigation to see why. And, so they can say, well, yes, she's handling the money very well. No, we're not going to make somebody else your payee. Or they can say, oh, you know what? No, she's not handling your money so well. Who would you like to be your payee? And then they'll do an investigation with that person. So those are important things to know. So full guardianship is, think about it this way, the absolute most restrictive way to live as an adult. So again, we fight for the least restrictive environment while they're in school. If you take guardianship or you are awarded guardianship when your child is an adult, that is the most restrictive environment. So some alternatives to guardianship, some more, would be signing advance directives, which allows adults who can communicate healthcare decisions to provide directions about what they want to do when they aren't able to do that anymore. And then, of course, supported decision making, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that one. So what is supported decision making? Supported decision making. So rights equals your choices equals self-determination, which is what we all want, right? We want that for ourselves, and we want that for our kids as well. Supported decision making is a recognized alternative to guardianship through which people with disabilities use friends, family members, and professionals to help them understand the situation and the choices they face, so they can make their own decisions with the need for a guardian. So maybe your child does, have the quote unquote need for a guardian, but your child does very well about listening to you, and what you say matters, and they know that you're doing the right thing for them and that you're advising them correctly. You may not need to take guardianship if they're willing to accept your advice and work with other people and professionals as well. So again, that allows them to keep their rights, but it still allows the parent input. I also stress to everyone that I've done a lot of trainings with young people, and they don't want to feel quote unquote different or quote unquote special. They want to be just like everybody else. So it's important that even before you get to the step, with guardianship or supported decision making, that you talk to your kids about the way that you use supported decision making. So for instance, we don't all do our own taxes. Lots of us rely on CPAs to do those taxes for us. That is supported decision making. Medical care. Very few of us are doctors or know what's best for us when it comes to something like that. So we seek out professional help, supported decision making. I don't know a thing about cars. So if I have car trouble, I need to speak to a mechanic. They're going to give me some suggestions about what needs to be done. What I do with that information is up to me, but that's supported decision making. And the same goes for house repairs, and we could go on and on and on about how we use supported decision making in our lives. It's very important that our kids see that and know that that's what they're doing, so that it becomes a normal part of life, so that if you start talking to them, at 18 years old about supported decision making and they have no idea what that is or what that looks like, they're going to feel singled out. And we don't want to do that. So it's just important that they know that everyone uses supported decision making in one way or another. Does anybody have any questions right now? I just want to stop for just a second. Is there anything that anyone wants to say or ask right now?
Kelly, there was just a question about what age do we recommend that children be involved in their IEP? And I just answered and just let them know that, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act states that 16 would be the age that students would begin transition and be involved in their IEPs. But I said Kentucky, we have even went a step further and we start transition at age 14 or 8th grade, whichever is first. So that's when students should be invited to participate in their own IEP meetings. So I answered that question. The other thing I wanted to just interject in this is that my son, I became his guardian when he turned 18. And so I was his legal full guardian for 5 years. And we just petitioned the court and had his rights reinstated and are now using supported decision making. And also I am his power of attorney and help with his medical with advanced directives. And so there are so many other alternatives out there. And that's why I think Kelly's doing a great job of sharing that yes, guardianship is always an option, but there are so many other alternatives that can be used. And I think in our situation is the perfect example of how we went from the most restrictive at a time really when I probably didn't need to do that then. And now, we are doing, the supported decision making, and it is working well. We have a great team of people around Clayton to assist him with his needs so that he's not always coming to me for everything. I think that's important. He's 24 now. And so, we're trying really to instill in him that there are other people who can help him in that supported decision making process other than just mom. So I just wanted to share that.
Well, and while we're on that note, I'm going to interject this, and I don't have my calendar pulled up, but later in the month we are actually doing a presentation on a self-directed IEP for young adults, so that they can learn how to speak up in those meetings. So I advise everyone who is interested, or if you know someone that's interested, absolutely get on and participate in that webinar. There's going to be some great information, and it's very important, like I said, that we teach these things before it's too late. It's very important that they learn to speak up, to talk about their disability and the assistance that they need. And there is no better place than in their IEP meetings. They're working with family, they're working with professionals, they're working with counselors, people who provide services. It's a great opportunity for parents. Stella, do you know right off the top of your head when that is?
Yes, I was just getting ready to say that. It's Thursday, August the 27th from 11 to 12, and I will drop in the chat box the link for folks to register for that.
Great. All right, so back to guardianship. So what does the National Guardianship Association say? Until I had a son who was 18 years old and we were talking about guardianship, I didn't even know there was a National Guardianship Association, but there is. And they say that guardianship should be utilized only when lesser restrictive supports are not available. Alternatives to guardianship, including supported decision making, should always be identified and considered whenever possible prior to the commencement of guardianship proceedings. Whenever guardianship is necessary to assist a person, the guardianship must be limited to the maximum retention of individual rights and can be customized to the individual needs of the person under guardianship. And so I just wanted to insert this. You may be worried that your son or daughter or nephew or client or whatever reason you're here, the person that you have in mind, you may be concerned that they are going to get involved with someone who maybe isn't as colorful as you think they should be. Or you feel like someone's going to potentially take advantage of them. Or maybe they're going to make some bad decisions and maybe start hanging out with the wrong crowd. I know that's usually a big concern. But we all have done those things. I just about guarantee I would pretty well lay dollars to donuts that on this webinar of 37 people, all of us have been friends with maybe people that weren't the best influence. Or maybe we were the person, like myself, I wasn't the best influence. So, or maybe we've gotten in some bad relationships. You know what? We learn from those things. And our kids have the right to learn those lessons too. Maybe you feel like they'll get into a job that they dislike. I would, lay dollars to donuts again that at some point we have all had that opportunity, and our kiddos deserve that same opportunity. They're not pleasant, but they're what make us who we are. And just because our child or client or niece or nephew or grandchild or whatever may have an intellectual developmental disability that keeps them, that makes it necessary to assist them in some areas, you can't use it as a way to control them. You cannot step in and say, well, I'm going to have guardianship because I want you to do what I want you to do. That's not okay. And if we go back to a time when we were 18 years old, had our parents said that to us, we'd have said, oh, no, you're not. Or we would have fought it. Or or maybe we wouldn't have fought it. Maybe it would have absolutely crushed us. Maybe it would have broken our heart. But our kids have rights. And we fight for those rights continually, all day, every day. So when they grow up, they still have those rights to experience life to the fullest. And life isn't always rainbows and butterflies. Life doesn't always make lemonade for us or hand us cupcakes. And so hardship is part of life. And I'm not saying throw your kid under the bus and allow whatever to happen to them. I'm just saying the guardianship must be limited to allow the maximum retention of individual rights. I cannot stress that enough. So, declared disabled for guardianship. So this is about the process of applying for guardianship. So the proceedings take place in district court before a jury. You will visit your local district court in your county to begin the process. You'll speak to the district attorney or someone who works in his or her office, and they'll really talk to you. They'll be blunt with you. If there was at one point when my son was making some really, really dangerous decisions for himself. Now, we have another son who's just a little bit younger. He was also making those same decisions, but I was torn. I was like, I don't know if he recognizes the danger of this. And so I went and I talked to the district attorney, and they, laid everything out for me and helped me make a decision, which, just FYI, I have still chosen not to pursue guardianship. So then if you are going through with it, and this is what you're going to do, you have to file a petition with the court and provide the documents requested. There is a fee to do this. So if you need more information on that, we're happy to send that to you. There is a fee involved. The court's going to appoint an attorney for both you and the young adult. And then the person who you're applying for guardianship for must be examined by at least 3 people. It's going to be a physician, a psychologist, and a social worker. And then the court date is set. So in 2018, there were some legislative changes to guardianship in Kentucky. The Kentucky HB 5 amends its jury trial requirement for guardianship cases. Kentucky was the last state to kind of amend this. They were the last ones that were requiring a jury trial. Kentucky, here we go. Kentucky is the only state that requires a jury trial in guardianship cases, but now a bench trial is permissible if A, the respondent is present, counsel for the respondent, and the attorney for the Commonwealth agree to a bench trial. So everyone has to be in agreement. B, no objection to a bench trial is made by an interested party or entity. And C, the interdisciplinary evaluation report prepared for the proceeding reflects a unanimous consensus of the person preparing it that the respondent is disabled and or partially disabled. The court has reviewed the report and the court finds no cause to require a jury trial. So you're really only going to do this bench trial if the people who came in and and saw the child, the three people we just talked about, if they come in and everyone says is disabled or partially disabled, and the judge finds no cause to pull a jury in. So, and that was signed by Matt Bevan on March 13th, 2018. So the duties of a guardian or conservator. So you will be responsible for the care and custody of the individual. You will be responsible for managing the financial resources of the person. You have to report that to the court. You are required to make sure that rights and personal freedoms aren't restricted. So again, that doesn't give you the power to control them. Within 60 days after being appointed, the conservator must file a list of the person's property with the court. And then every 2 years, you're going to report back to the court and tell how much money the person has received and how it has been spent. So this is not an easy process, and there's a lot of paperwork, and there's work to it. So it's not a one and done deal. And then there's an evaluation. So just because you're a guardian today doesn't mean, just like Stella said, that you always have to be a guardian. So if you need guardianship, or your child needs you to have guardianship, it could be a temporary thing. It may be while they just continue to develop a little bit. So just keep all those things in your back pocket for future reference. Voting rights. Voting is very, very important. And people are no longer automatically lose the right to vote if a guardian is appointed, as they used to. So it may be important to make sure to remind the judge of their voting rights, because the judge must make a specific finding to remove those voting rights. If a person loses the right to vote, they can petition the court to get that voting right reinstated. And then you're going to want to help that person watch voter registration deadlines and start that process as early as possible. Stella, would you like to share your story of Clayton voting for the first time?
Sure, that would be great. This was actually the picture. This is my son Clayton. This was the picture after he went to vote, and he was so excited when he actually, got to vote. I will say this: I was still his guardian when he first voted. I did have to, as Kelly said, when I did file guardianship with him, and at that time it was still a jury trial, so I had to go before a jury and declare him incompetent, which, if you've never done that before, I promise you it was by far one of the worst days of my life. And I did make sure that the judge did make sure that he did have his voting rights still intact. I have talked to families who are guardians and the child's voting rights are not there. So they have had to go to protection advocacy to get those voting rights reinstated. So just make sure that if you work with families, if you're a family member who is thinking about guardianship, that you do specifically say that to the judge, that you want their voting rights to be there. A lot of time judges, it's a little box the judge has to check on the form, and sometimes they do not do it correctly. So be sure that that is done. But when we went to vote that day, it was one of the best days, because he was so proud and so excited, as you can see from his face in that picture there. And it's just something that we still do. He still votes for every election. He's very outspoken about who he votes for. And so I think that's good. Sometimes we are a house divided, and that's what it's all about. So that was just a really great day for him, and just make sure that everyone still has their right to vote.
Thank you for sharing. I love that story. We are going to be wrapping up just a minute early, but something that I want to share with you is the next slide says change is hard. We all make bad decisions and we can all learn from them. So can an adult with a disability. That can be a health decision, a money decision, when it comes to love or a living situation. We can't always protect our children. We have to let them learn to fly. Stephen R. Donaldson says, we are not promised ease. The purpose of life is not ease. It is to choose and to act upon the choice. In that task, we are not measured by outcomes. We are measured only by daring and effect and resolve. Stella, do we have any questions, or can you guys think of anything that maybe we haven't covered? We still have about 15 minutes left, so if you have anything, please don't be afraid to ask.
Someone asked if the recording would be available, and I let them know that yes, we get them up in usually 2 days, 2 to 3 days on our YouTube channel, and you can visit our website, and I put the website in the question box there and send it to everyone. And when you get on our website, right at the very top, you will see a link that says Kentucky Spin YouTube page, and you can go there and check back in a couple of days, and this recording will be there. But also on our YouTube channel, you will find all of our recordings from our past webinars, and we've been doing them since March. So we have a lot of webinars that are on there. Once they do get on our YouTube channel, they're all closed caption. So please visit that, and you'll find a lot of great information. So we'll just wait a few minutes and see if anyone has any questions. And I think we'll just give them a few seconds. I don't see anything else right now, Kelly, as far as a question goes.
Okay. Well, I would just like to insert that when you exit out of this immediately in a new pop-up window, you should have an evaluation that will pop up. If you don't fill out that evaluation, it will be emailed to you in Stella's follow-up to you tomorrow. I believe it'll come out tomorrow. But if you could
Actually,
please
Kelly, actually it'll go this afternoon out to everyone, and
awesome.
It'll also have a certificate of completion from the webinar today, and it will also have all of the handouts, and they'll get the survey link again if they don't do it at the end of the session.
Awesome. Well, again, if you have any feedback or any recommendations, please put them in your evaluation. It really, really does help us. If there's no other questions, you guys are free to go. If you think of anything later, please don't hesitate to contact us. I think
we have one. Hang on. Oh. Hang on just a second. Some are coming in. Okay. One says, what about guardianship determination for divorced couples?
I'm not sure, like, if, are you asking, and I don't know if you can unmute yourself.
Yes, that was.
Are you asking if they can make two guardians?
Yes, and I'll kind of answer that, Kelly, if you don't mind. Sure. One of the things that is recommended when couples are divorced is that they do go, if guardianship is something that your family chooses, then parents attend, and file for guardianship together, and that both of their names are listed as co-guardians. And let me explain why that is so very important. We did that when I petitioned the court when I was Clayton's guardian, and his father has passed away. So my husband, now what we did is we were both guardians, for him. So it would say, Stella Beard or Ryan Beard. And we were with that word "or" was so very important, because if something happened to me, my husband would not have to go petition the court and get guardianship. It was automatic because of that word "or." So that was just real important, and that's something that we had to do that day in court. So I would definitely do that. And I think there's another question that's just asking that right now. What is the process of having a backup guardian if that guardian passes away? And that is something you can do. It can be an either or on the guardianship papers. If you do not have two guardians listed on the papers and one passes away, that person would have to go petition the court again and file for guardianship. Another question that's coming up right now is, I'm looking at the comparison chart. How is a power of attorney different from a guardian? Well, a power of attorney is different than a guardian, because a guardian has all you know, all rights for the person. The person cannot make any decisions without the guardian's approval. A power of attorney just gives that person rights for different things like medical or financial, and that's kind of what we have done with the power of attorney. That power of attorney can pretty much say what you want it to say, and that's what we did. Our power of attorney over Clayton gives me the right to help him with financial decisions, and then we filed another document with the advanced directives that allows me to help him with medical decisions also. So I hoped that. And another question is, what if there's a disagreement on who should be the guardian? And that's something that I would think would need to be handled with an attorney, you know, an attorney advising and helping with that decision. I would hope in a lot of cases that parents could work together on that, but I understand there are just some that just aren't going to be able to do that. And that's where I would think an outside mediator would need to be involved, an attorney would need to be involved to help make those decisions. And yes, as someone else is asking, can there be two guardians? And yes, that's what I just said. You know, I would highly recommend that with guardianship, that you have both co-guardians, because that way, if something suddenly happens to one, as in our case with my son's father passing away, it was very important that that's already established on that paper. So let's see, I'm looking to see if there was any other questions. And again, you know, I would, with that disagreement, I would just, you know, I would try to reach out to mediation or involve an attorney to help with those decisions, because that is can be a very tough situation. I understand. I don't see any more right now. But again, if anyone has any specific questions, our email address is right there. You can send that to our email, and Kelly or myself will definitely respond back to you with answers. And then, like I said, those handouts will be mailed to you along with the PowerPoint, which will have all of those links that's been discussed in the presentation today. You will have those in the PowerPoint presentation when you get that. So I think that's all for now, Kelly, but thank you so much. You did a great job, and we appreciate you all listening to us today. And please get on our website. We do have a webinar scheduled that we are getting ready to send information out next Tuesday. We're going to be doing webinars now every Tuesday at 11 on different topics. We're calling it Kentucky Spins Tip Tuesday. And next Tuesday, we're actually going to be talking about COVID-19 updates, and we're going to talk about compensatory education. So we will be sending out links to that, and you can check our website on how to register for that as soon as we get that uploaded here shortly. So thank you all so much. Kelly, do you have anything else?
I don't. Thank you again. You all have a great day.
Okay, thank you all. Bye-bye.